Hello, welcome to our climate discussion for November. Today we're going to talk about Venice. Why? Well, it's kind of close to my heart. After all, my ancestry is from Italy, so clearly I would always be interested in this topic, especially with some of my family coming from that part of the region of the world. Most of us come from Sicily, so it's a little bit further south. But it's very interesting to see how that whole topic is being handled in the media. Of course, the first claim is climate change. Now, understand there is a component to the climate change, but in this case, you really can't put all of that. It's a factor, but not the primary factor. First of all, understand the geology, and we'll put the links below on all this information. Venice has been sinking. How much has it been sinking? Well, about 1.2 inches per decade. Yeah, and it's also slanting. See, the way that it's slanting into the lagoon is kind of doing one of these. So what's happening is that part of the islands, part of the barriers that lift up Venice are actually rising just a little bit. But the other parts are sinking. Now, this has been going on for about 1,200 years, or about since the time that they started building there. They didn't exactly pick the best place to build a city. And in fact, they kind of knew that by the way that they built it, and basically building on all these islands. But it was an excellent way to set up trade. Of course, that's what they were thinking back then. You know, they weren't thinking about sinking islands or climate change or, you know, what happens when they burn a tree. They were thinking about more trade, means more money, means better life. Okay, so they didn't know what they were setting themselves up for, much like how the settlers in New Orleans didn't know what they were setting themselves up for. So these islands have been sinking for not only decades, centuries. Okay, and so now we've gotten to the point where our technology can correct that problem. One problem is that, well, corruption creates a bigger problem. It's called Moses. Now, Moses was supposed to be completed about 2 decades ago. The construction started in 2003, and it was supposed to lift up the islands or at least create a barrier enough so that this type of flooding wouldn't happen. Unfortunately, some things got mixed up. Somebody took a little money here, and there was a strike there. And before you know it, it's only 85% complete today. So if it was in place completely, the flooding never would have happened. Yeah, you heard me right. We wouldn't be talking about this right now if we actually had that whole project done about a decade ago. But nonetheless, it is what it is. So what's happening is that you're having those islands sink at about 1 inch per decade. You have sea levels rising, and there's your climate change component, about 1 inch per decade. So seas are rising, land is sinking. Not the best situation if you're on an unstable geological island that tends to flood in the first place. Then you throw in a very strong area of low pressure that is tracking over northern Italy that produced very nice snowfall over portions of the Alps and created some pretty significant flooding for Venice. Now, understand, they're pretty used to flooding over there. So, in fact, it gets to the point where, like, you literally go out to dinner, and it's like, oh, look, it's flooding. Ah, don't worry, pass the bread. That's literally how they live their lives. They're so used to it. It's just a way of life. But when it gets this bad, it gets to the point where it's literally flooding the city council, which we saw online. That is because you had a very strong storm surge, you know, like a strong nor'easter here. So, it was a combination of factors. A little bit of climate change, okay? The earth is warming. You're seeing sea levels rise about 1 inch per decade. And you're seeing those islands sink about 1 to 2 inches per decade. And then you have a strong storm surge. You throw all that together, and you throw a little bit of corruption, and you got the worst flood that you've seen in 50 years. That's pretty much the story of Venice. And unfortunately, this won't be the last time we're going to hear about this. Well, I would expect not. And until we complete Moses, we're going to continue to see this flooding. The good news is that it's 85% done. So at the rate that they're building and corruption, this and that, maybe we might see it done by 2050. Who knows? Meanwhile, if you're in Louisiana, take this lesson very seriously, because the same conditions that are in Venice are also evolving in Louisiana around New Orleans. It won't be the first time we see this. It won't be the last. That's your climate thoughts for this month. Have a wonderful day, and as always, stay safe out there.